British warning. Trump isn't planning to leave, meaning the White House. Sometimes it takes an outsider to describe what you're living in. In the British newspaper The Mirror, columnist Mikey Smith lays out what he believes Donald Trump will do, and that Donald Trump has no intention of quietly walking out of the White House when his legal term ends. Here's his case point by point. Not saying I agree with every one of them, but it's well thought out points that all lead to this conclusion. Donald Trump will never willingly leave the White House. Number one, Trump is already openly talking about 2028, handing out Trump 2028 hats and suggesting he'll stay beyond 2029. That means that he's not simply going to respect the tradition of filling 2 terms and that's it. So that's one clear thing. The next, he has continually, repeatedly floated this idea that war is a reason to suspend elections. Because Zelensky of Ukraine said, well, that's why we haven't had elections, there's been war. And boom, every time that happens, you could see the thought bubble above Trump. He's literally said, oh, so if there's a war, you don't have to have elections. You can see where he's going there because he's declaring wars constantly. So that would be a reason to just not have an election. If there is no election, there's no new president. So why would he ever leave? He's still calling 2020 stolen, despite losing in court 60 times. So if he feels that should be overturned, why not overturn any court decision or any election results that he doesn't like? Therefore, he can stay. The fact that he's pardoned hundreds of criminals involved with the January 6th insurrection, the rebellious insurrection, where, let's not forget, people died that day and the day after because of this insurrection. Giving them pardons is sending a clear-cut message that if you're willing to keep me in power, think, think, nudge, nudge, nothing bad's going to happen to you. Take care of you. So that's very much a sign that he doesn't want to leave office. The next we have turning federal troops into polling place intimidation. This is something I've talked about a lot on this show. I think it deserves more attention, but this columnist for The Mirror points this out as a serious proof point as to why we should think Trump will never leave. Because let's say for a minute he gets the Supreme Court, which seems to be in his hip pocket these days, to simply say the Constitution banning someone from serving more than 2 terms doesn't apply to Trump. So let's just say that happens, which is not used to seem silly to say. That doesn't sound silly anymore. So let's say he actually gets his name on the ballot. And let's say the polls show in half a dozen swing states, he's going to lose by 4% or 5%. Well, that's not at all shocking or nothing surprising about that. Here's where sending federal troops in. If you simply send federal troops into every district that has a lot of Democratic votes and say, hey, we're going to be searching you, we're going to be throwing you to the ground, we're going to be looking to see if your relatives are here legally. Obviously, you could depress voter turnout and you could be highly, highly selective. And this administration has shown it's willing to be highly selective and go pinpoint cities that it perceives as not having sufficient MAGA support. So I have absolutely zero problem buying into the idea that federal troops could be used at so-called Democrat cities, so-called Democrat voting precincts, as a sign of intimidation. Next, we have the sheer fact that he's tearing down the White House, the entire East Wing, and building a gigantic monstrosity, 90,000 square foot ballroom filled with gold to be even bigger than Mar-a-Lago and to seem like something you would see in Versailles. That's what kings do. It's not what someone does if they are a temporary renting tenant and know they have to leave in 3 years, because that's the attitude most presidents have is, this isn't my house. Yeah, I'll put up a few pictures in the president's residency of family and grandchildren, but I'm not going to start tearing down walls to make this look like a presidential palace. Never even occurred to any other president before. And especially if you're 79 and you know you're supposed to be moving in 3 years, does it really make sense to start this gigantic remodeling project? It's going to take years, $250 million. Doesn't make sense unless it's your final destination, unless it's your final home. That is the conclusion that Mikey Smith, columnist for The Mirror, makes, and I think pretty compelling. I've been maintaining this for quite some time, that Donald Trump will never willingly leave the White House. And people say, oh, TJ, you're being extreme, it's hyperbole. Now there are more and more voices calling this out. Because let's make no mistake about it, Donald Trump does occasionally speak the truth. He does occasionally speak his mind. He has said repeatedly, his only regret from his first term in office was leaving. In his own mind, the White House belonged to him. He deserved it. The fact that he got fewer votes in the popular vote and the electoral college didn't matter. Constitutional niceties, like the winner of the electoral college gets to take the White House, didn't mean anything to him. That was the whole point of January 6th. Rules don't matter. Only thing that matters is mine. Give me. I want more stuff, more power, more gold. That is the Trump mantra. And I think it's time more and more Americans take him at his word in this case. It's always difficult because he lies so frequently. If you just said, okay, 95% of what he says is a lie, you would be accurate. The problem, though, is really figuring out what's the 5% where he actually means it. Invading Panama or Greenland, Canada, probably didn't really mean it. But regretting having ever left the White House, I do think he means that. I think he's very sincere in this case because it fits with everything else we know about him. He believes the rules do not apply to him. All the power should go to him. The gold should go to him. The adulation, the adoration, and the attention. Well, if you leave the White House, you're not going to get as much attention. That we can pretty much guarantee, although he did a pretty good job 2001 to 2005. But there's nothing like being president. If you are a megalomaniac, if you are a narcissistic megalomaniac, and you really think that you alone have the answers to the world's problems, let's face it, there's no better job ever than being president of the United States or being king of the United States.